What is the most Michael Scott thing your boss has ever done? A bunch of years ago, I worked at a PetSmart that had a very Michael Scott-esque grams. In the middle of our shift one day, he calls all the staff up to the front door of the store where the floor mat has worked its way out into the path of the automatic doors and is keeping them from closing. Standing on the mat, he looks at us and very seriously says, "We have a problem, guys. I've been here since we opened this morning and this is the 4th time that this floor mat has moved out into the path of the door. Now does anybody know what this means?" Nobody pipes up for this because it's clearly bait for him to tell someone that they're wrong. This means that we have more people leaving the store than we have coming in. What? The reason that we have more people leaving the store than we have coming in is because we're not providing the best customer service. Once we start doing that, we'll have more people coming in than leaving. Now I want you guys to put on your best customer service, and by closing tonight, I want to see this floor mat against the back wall of the store. Okay. Gathered everyone in the office kitchen to demonstrate exactly how he liked his coffee made, but pitched it as if he was letting everyone in on the secret to making the perfect coffee and we'd all be thankful to him later. He proceeds to make a completely freaking normal instant coffee in pretty much the only way it's possible to make it. Mid-level manager had eyes for the shy clerk girl at a company-wide conference in front of the maybe 250 fellow employees. Starts his presentation with, "They say that when you make a presentation in front of a lot of people, you should imagine your audience naked." Looks directly at the girl. "Thank you, shy clerk girl." You can imagine the crushed look on her face and the reaction of the audience, half chuckling, half gasping, and a prolonged awkward silence. Perfect Michael Scott moment. I'm shocked that wasn't a line on the show. My former boss just got a promotion and left our workplace. He bought himself a going away full-sized sheet cake, 18 inches x 24 inches, 80 servings. He cut off a small corner at his going away party and then proceeded to close the cake box and take home the other 79 servings instead of sharing any of it with anyone. He was a really good boss and I will miss him, but that was pretty typical of him too. Well, that takes the cake. My boss gave herself an award and proceeded to show it off to everyone higher up than her. Never thought this would be so popular, so here's an edit to add clarification, more information. Without going into specifics, I work for a department at a college university, and my boss, who is the director of our department, also is the president of a volunteer organization that works in conjunction with higher education for our field. Any obligations for this volunteer organization are to be conducted outside of standard operating hours, yet half of my office, we're small, so 3 out of 6 people spend hours of our work time running this organization in her stead. So basically the award she received was for exceptional and outstanding contributions to volunteer organization. That's even worse than Michael Scott. He only bought himself a mug. He hired some random migrant farm workers to fix an authentic Mexican dinner for our office Christmas party. I grew up working alongside migrant farm workers in the Midwest, detasseling corn. They eat poor people food just like the rest of the working poor in the rural Midwest. So I knew this was going to be hilarious. I was not disappointed when he asked them what a certain delicious cheesy pasta dish they served us was called, and they answered mac and cheese casserole. This is wonderfully Scott-esque. It's born out of sincerity and falls astray at subtle racism. He was spelling his name over the phone to someone, and when he got to the I in his name he said I, as in, I. I once had a similar incident. I came across H, and for whatever freaking reason, I said, H as in Hitler. There was an awkward pause. I've answered this before, but my old boss once talked to me loudly about how he didn't understand how tampons worked. Then when I provided a perfunctory explanation, exclaimed that the only thing women should be sticking up there are penises. This is more something Todd Packer would say. Boss wanted to give his tie to one of my co-workers before a meeting to look more professional. The company we were meeting with don't wear ties. Our company doesn't wear ties. Both companies know this. My co-worker was wearing a lumberjack style shirt, so my boss wanted him to wear a formal tie with a short-sleeved, lumberjack style shirt to look more professional. Please tell me you have a picture of business lumberjack. when he pages someone over the intercom, he instructs them to report to the senior vice president's office instead just saying please come to Gary's office. We have like 20 people that work here. Everyone knows it's him when he starts the page. He likes hearing his own voice and title. My wife had a Michael Scott who always referred to people by their full names, even if there was no one else by that name. It was funniest with the woman who had a long name. I think we want to loop Stacy Smith Spitalfield in on this. There was no other Stacy. My grandfather passed away back in February. I flew back east for the funeral, and when I got back my boss was talking to me to see how everything went and touch base. The extent of the conversation was this: "Boss, how was the funeral?" Me: "About what you'd expect from a funeral. It was a nice service." "Boss, did you see the body?" Me: "Yes." "Boss, you." Trying to pick the company health insurance policy, so he polls the leadership team for input at an executive all hands. CEO states that we're all young and healthy, so no one needs things like dental or optical. Half of our executive team is wearing glasses. He moves on. He put a large caution, "Surface is hot" sticker on the denim dad butt, came into my office, shook his fanny at me, and asked what I thought of his safety signage. This may sound like sexual harassment, but just like I can't imagine Michael Scott actually being a predator, I couldn't imagine my boss being one. This reminded me of when Michael wore his ladies' power suit to the office and showed off the backside. Remodeled our break room with a $4,000 fridge, ping pong table, espresso machine, and old arcade. After the red ribbon cutting party, he announced due to the tight budget, we wouldn't be getting our Christmas bonuses. Told the most inappropriate joke to me at work, in front of about 10 people. "What do you call nuts on your chest?" "Chestnuts." "What do you call nuts on a wall?" "Walnuts." "What do you call nuts on your chin?" "I don't know." "A dong in your mouth." Awkwardness throughout the whole room ensues. Dr. Dre, D.S. Newitz, 1992, 036 1 o'clock. I work at a Fortune 500 company, in the middle of an important meeting which was based around my boss. She leans over to me and whispers, "I'm organizing a flash mob for later this year. I want you to be a part of it." He has fallen asleep while speaking with me and signing some paperwork. Then when I woke him, played it off like nothing happened. Regularly spills coffee all over himself. Hung up on his daughter while she was telling him over the phone she was accepted to medical school, with nothing more than an okay, bye. Gets out of confrontational conversations with other department heads and clients by mumbling incoherently or with irrelevant statements. They usually don't know how to respond and he just sort of slinks out of it. The list goes on. Gets out of confrontational conversations with other department heads and clients by mumbling incoherently or with irrelevant statements. They usually don't know how to respond and he just sort of slinks out of it. This man is a genius. He put a fake severed head in my bottom desk drawer and watched me from the corner of the room to see if it scared me. I just looked up, in a very Jim way, and blinked a few times and then closed the drawer. The look on his face was pure defeat. He was actually upset it didn't scare me, like that's all he thought about the night before and I completely ruined his day. This is beautiful. Realizing I'm a little late to this, but still, I can't resist. I am a teacher and my school principal can be incredibly Michael Scott-like. One example includes, the day before Christmas vacation, students had just taken semester finals and had a half day of school. Teachers were swamped with grading the finals and grades were, of course, due the following afternoon. After the students left for their half day, teachers were told we would have a quick meeting followed by scheduled time to grade our assessments. Much to our relief, the meeting appeared short and most of the afternoon was scheduled for grading. When we got to the meeting, however, our principal excitedly announced that the whole afternoon schedule had been a lie and that we must all cover our eyes and walk to the science lab. After reluctantly following these bizarre instructions, we all found ourselves in what my principal called Winter Wonderland, where we would spend the next 3 hours participating in a gingerbread building contest. She locked us in, told us she would be back to judge at the end of the day, and left. TLDR. My principal locked all of the teaching staff in the science lab and forced us to make gingerbread houses on the busiest grading day of the season. That has to be against the FAR Code and or the Geneva Convention. My dad's boss once said he would give all employees something to boost encouragement in the workplace. They all got camo baseball hats with JITA done written on them. My former boss is a 71-year-old woman and we were on a conference call with our web designer talking about revamping a website. She starts complaining about the layout of the web page and proceeded to take a ruler and started measuring on her monitor, saying that the page is too narrow. There was a long, uncomfortable silence at the other end of the line and it took all the willpower I had to stifle a laugh. Our roles have since reversed, with me being her manager, which has led to much more awkwardness. Thankfully she will be retiring in November. My old boss knew we were all stressed and overworked, so he thought that the best way to get us to relax was to have a drum circle in the middle of the office while we were all trying to work. He kept trying to get people to join in, even people who were on the phone. Eventually it was just him sitting on the floor hitting bongo drums. Feelin' hot hot hot. One time my boss told an entire room that he had a soft spot for drunk drivers because if it weren't for a drunk driver killing his mother's first husband then he never would have been born. Also, his nickname was a slang term for ejaculating. When one of our clients finally told him what it meant, he refused to stop using it as a nickname because it was his name first. Really nice guy though, and it was fun to have him as my first boss. Left us with a ton of stories. The CEO called a company-wide meeting with no details provided. We were all to meet in the auditorium for a big announcement. People were freaking freaked out. Like, what the heck is going on? Did he sell the company? Do we have jobs? What the frick? Everyone shuffles in and the CEO and the half a dozen other execs are at the front of the room. We had a record-breaking year. Help yourself to some sodas and cake. Also, I am taking the executive staff to the Bahamas as a reward. We'll be out of the office next week. Weakest round of applause I've ever heard. Oh my goodness. I used to work for a crappy Italian chain food restaurant. Think Dennis of Italian food, and we had the best numbers in the state, second in the US. So all of our managers got sent on a lavish trip to Italy. They gave us crappy little Caesar's pizza that was cold as a thank you. My boss is Michael Scott. He even looks like Steve Carell. He tries so hard to be the entertainer. I keep a running list to tell my wife. I'll list some examples here but have to withhold some stories because they're too specific and can be routed back to me. His first meeting as boss, he put up a picture of Donald Trump on the PowerPoint and went into a Trump impression, saying, "We're going to make department great again," and continued saying Trump things like "you're beautiful thing." There were only 4 of us in the room. It went on for an uncomfortable amount of time, with no one laughing. No joke, his impression lasted 3 or 4 minutes with all of us awkwardly smiling and wishing he would move on. Someone made a German reference and he started going around the office saying Sieg Heil and Nazi saluting. He tells inappropriate stories all the time that go on for so long, without any idea they're inappropriate. Like how when he was young he used to tease his friend for going out with underage girls, or how he loved to change his old co-workers' wallpapers to gay p. He loves to recount stories to you of other times he did something he considered funny, like a funny remark he made in a meeting or something. The stories are so long, but he always makes it sound like he was killing it. He's used the terms "everyone roared with laughter" in moments I am sure are not true. An actual example is someone's last name was Townsend. He goes, "What's his mother's maiden name?" Village. The problem with listening to him recount his funny moments is that it takes forever to get the story over with. He tells you every detail, including the first and last name of everyone there. Anytime New York comes up, we have a lot of NY customers. He goes into a wise guy accent, starts going, "New York and yows guys." I sit next to my boss. The day I realized it was like working with Michael Scott was one day during my first 3 months when he was not in the office. It was easily the most productive day I ever had. I should mention he is very high up in the leadership ladder. Overall, good guy though. My boss is like Michael Scott's weird brother. He regularly asks me and my co-workers to set him up on dates. Holds meetings, and by meetings, it's him going through his Cupid and Tinder profiles so we can help judge the girls. If he's on the phone with someone and doesn't wish to continue the conversation, he will make a weird comment like I gotta go but let's talk later when you're in my basement after I kidnap you. If you're eating lunch, he'll stand behind you and stare at your food until you offer him some, which he will then reach onto your plate and start touching all your food to find the perfect fry. Will answer all questions in an Arnold Schwarzenegger impression. There's 1,000 more things he does that are so cringy and I could go on and on. Update. My boss and I are attending the same wedding and placed at the same table. He told me not to think of him as my boss, but as my party buddy. He also said he just wants us to, and I'm quoting directly, let loose, maybe get drunk, dance, heck we could even shoot up heroin together. I was told the following in my yearly review. You did everything we asked of you, but not the things we didn't ask of you. It was said in a very critical tone. Well, I received the money you paid me, but I didn't receive the money you didn't give me. Oh boy, where do I begin? Some of these are Michael Scott. Some are just plain weird. He's writing directing a movie about the mafia. He has money so it's actually decently shot and the acting is okay, but the story is so cookie cutter. He thinks it's incredibly original. He's also been getting into music the past few years with Berklee online courses. So he's been using his skills to score his own movie. He's very confident in his skills, but shouldn't be. He's writing a book on financial fraud. He's a forensic accountant professor so this actually makes sense. And he was having me help him edit it with the editor's notes. I'm a data analyst so this makes less sense. He kept trying to shoehorn in his political views on Obama and Hillary. I remember one editor note that your disdain for current politicians and Democratic Party are now actively discrediting your book. You have to stop. He'll go to the bathroom and then start a conversation with people outside the bathroom as he's peeing. He's a little scatterbrained. I work at an accounting firm and on occasion want the okay or confirmation for a schedule I made that it's what he needed. One time, I showed him one and he couldn't follow it. So I went back, but a thick border around the important parts and he told me it was perfect. People at my office now refer to the practice of highlighting the important parts as J-boxing. After I shared this story with them, my boss's name starts with a J, and boxing for the thick border box trick I used. We once had a company barbecue at his house since he has a nice backyard pool. His wife came home and apparently had no idea this was going to happen that day. During the school semester, he would take naps at work before he went into college. One time he fell asleep with a cup of coffee in his hand. There's now a huge stain on the kitchen carpet. There are others I just need time to think. Handed me a stack of applications for the job opening in my department and said just for your information, the one on top sounds like they're black, so only hire them if you want to be shot. I gave him a look and said seriously. He laughs a bunch and says, oh, I'm just kidding. They'd stab you. Then when I said, you know, my boyfriend's black, he responds, really? I would have pictured you with like a librarian or something. Ended up bringing in a gay man to interview for the job, who shook the boss's hand and later revealed that he was HIV positive. The boss freaked out and went to the doctor to be tested. When I first graduated law school and was working at a firm, they had just required everyone to have a smartphone. There was a meeting for which everyone was told to bring their phones because they were going to teach everyone how to use them. This was mainly for the older attorneys. This one partner, who was probably 75 years old, is late to the meeting, and he yells for his assistants to come into his office. He couldn't figure out how to unplug his phone and bring it to the meeting. He was actually trying to unplug everything from his desk phone and bring it to the smartphone meeting. Partners not understanding technology could have its own sub. I love my boss and he's a high school history teacher on weekends. There are also a pair of twin babies that live in our building. Whenever he sees them, he picks them up and recites the Gettysburg Address in the hopes that it'll be their first memory. In a meeting, he zoned out and was staring out the window. Someone asked what we should do for the new hires initiation lunch, and he mindlessly said, take her to a field and leave her there. It reminded me of how Michael talked about Toby. Not so much Michael Scott, but the cringe was the same. Worked for the American arm of a large Japanese company and our president was from Japan. He understood English pretty well but he couldn't speak it at all. He'd try but it was nearly possible to understand, so he never said much beyond good morning to anyone. His right-hand man and his secretary were always on hand to translate if he actually wanted to say something important. So we have this huge fancy Christmas party and we are in this elegant ballroom on the Queen Mary. One of the nitwits in HR decided that it would be great if the president could say a few words. 500 employees plus spouses all watching him with trepidation as he walks up to the podium. He looks around the room, takes a very long uncomfortable pause, and says, "Imagine the most stereotypical Hollywood Mr. Miyagi accent ever. I feel like octopus in W House. I don't know where to start." Double quote. Now that's how you open with a joke. I'm dying laughing here at work and I'm the only one on the phones. In the first month of my, then new, boss's tenure, he stood in the doorway to my office and told, at great length and in great detail, a story of how over the weekend he was pretty sure he'd seen a UFO. Not only had he seen the UFO, but he had reported it to the National UFO Database thing. He finishes this 15-minute monologue on the UFO, colors, height, movement pattern, etc. with the statement, "Turns out it was just a drone with a camera for filming the fireworks," and then turns and walks away. Wore all black when he fired someone. He also announced at a staff meeting, "If you see me here in all black, I'm here to walk someone to the door, aka firing them." He freaking wore black all the time just to frick with US. I was a young entry-level employee, and my boss invited me and another guy on my team to a birthday party at his apartment. I was 22, and he must have been about 35. My friend and I went out of obligation with our SOS. And when we got there, it was only us, my boss, and his boyfriend. 6 people, in his small Manhattan apartment. We barely knew each other. He put dinner in the oven to cook about 45 minutes after we got there, so the whole affair lasted hours. It was excruciating. The whole thing was pretty similar to an actual Office episode, but it happened a few years earlier. The dinner episode at Jen's house had to be the most awkward and uncomfortable I've ever felt. And I was just watching it on TV, lol. We were hiring 2 new employees, one Indian and one Chinese. He came by and asked us loudly, in front of several people, "Where my Asians at? When do they start?" During our all-hands town hall-esque meeting on my birthday, played Beyonce's Single Ladies and gave me a ring pop. During the meeting, I was eating the ring pop, and he said, "Wow, look at you really sucking on that thing. It's kind of distracting. Every time I look over there you're just sucking away." He's a male in his 50s. I'm a 23-year-old female. We hired an Indian person whose name is quite long and intricate. To Americans at least. She goes by a shortened version of this name. Manager attempted to read her full name in an exaggeratedly clunky fashion, then proclaimed, "Ah, whatever." Should have bit the ring pop immediately after he said that. This is probably much worse than Michael Scott. My female friend and I worked in a telemarketing office when we were 16. The boss was in a good mood and during a break was telling jokes the one day. He asks my friend if she knows the 3 Nelsons. She says no, so he tells her to turn around and he says there's the half Nelson. Puts her in a half Nelson. 1 arm lock. There's the full Nelson. Puts her in a full Nelson. 2 arm lock behind your head. And the father Nelson and butt slams her with his crotch. Now my friend was a goofy chick and pretty weird, so she, although shocked, laughed it off and genuinely thought it was funny. But man, butt slamming a 16-year-old employee, he's real lucky she thought it was funny. Everyone else had to pick their jaws up off the floor. Here are a couple things from one boss I had. He would also bring the birthday boy out for lunch and spring for his check anytime someone had a birthday, which was cool. All male IT department, so no need to do he/she. I once asked for a day off by email and he replied coincidentally, Three Stooges. It was season 1-2 where Michael Scott would do an impression then quietly say who the impression was of. He decided to promote individuals in different sections to team lead. One morning I could see him hovering outside our office while our new team lead gave me some negative feedback that was obviously from my boss, but he didn't want to be the bad guy. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.